But Brandon, let's move on into our next topic, and we're actually looking at the NBA draft for the first time here on the Primetime Podcast. Hello, basketball fans, for coming on over. I mean, this is the first time we've been in football mode for most of the time, but like I was telling you before we started recording today, this is the special time where we plant that pivot foot, and then very slowly we're starting to pivot out of football season into basketball season. So this is the very beginning.
But while keeping that pivot foot and not traveling.
Can't lift that pivot foot. Don't want to travel. Don't want to walk in the park, even though that's a nice thing to do, except not this time in Chicago. Not this time. But we're looking, the first player we're going to look at to start our kind of draft coverage here on the Primetime Podcast is we're going to look at Trae Young today, Brandon. And the question that we are going to try to answer is, could Trae Young become the number one pick in the NBA draft? And the reason why I say that is right now, just to give a little bit of perspective, we can't use a fast break mock draft because Dave and Sean, their first mock draft, I believe, is going to come in the weighing months. They're going to have it either in December or January will be their first mock draft this year. However, what we are going to go off of is Tankathon. Love Tankathon.com, and their mock draft has Trae Young right now, the leading scorer in college basketball, 11th overall in the NBA draft. With him being 11 right now, that's our starting point. Do you believe or do you think Trae Young could play himself up to be the number one pick when we get to June?
He could, because if he keeps this up, that what he's doing right now, this pace, he's going at a phenomenal pace, and we're not really even into the meat and potatoes yet of the season. You know, we've had a lot of games, we've had a lot of good games, we've had a lot of close games, but we have to remember that we haven't even really hit any of the big games, the big conference games, which are going to be coming in the next couple of months. If he keeps this up throughout that entire time, I'd be surprised if he wasn't the first overall pick. That'd be very impressive. But is it safe to say that many times when a guy starts out with this ravaging pace, he keeps it? They don't. A lot of times they do not. He's probably not going to keep up his 30 points per game, but maybe he does. You know, maybe he does. But I'm just going back and looking at much of history. Guys don't keep this rapid pace for the entire season. Now, would I love to see it? Absolutely, because what I've seen from him so far, it's been outstanding. I mean, looking at the Oregon game, looking at the USC game, and just looking at what he's done, the shots he takes and makes, and what he's able to do. He's not able to just take shots. He's able to, move with the basketball. He's able to drive with the basketball. He's able to do all of those things effectively. So if he's able to stay somewhere around where he's at right now and continue to do those things effectively and be better even outside of shooting, he could still find a way to work his way up to the number one spot.
Well, the thing that I noticed, and this was when I was doing research for this topic on Trae Young, like watching him play, the thing that everyone loves about him is the style at which he plays, where it's kind of like a more free-flowing style. But the thing that social media blows up about is his pull-up threes. And however, percentage-wise, I believe in the last, 4 games, he's actually very consistent. He's taken 11 threes in each of the last 4 or 5 games. His average throughout those, 4 of 11 from the field. It's not bad, like a 34%, if my math is correct up here. 35%. Not a terrible 3-point percentage, but when you put it in comparison to 4, you're making 4 of every 11 shots from the arc, you're looking going, I want that up a little bit higher. And one of the big players that, of course, social media is going to overreact. People are going to overreact. But right now, people are comparing him like, oh my God, is he Steph Curry 2.0? I'm looking at you. If you're on Blog Talk Radio, iTunes, Stitcher, TuneIn Radio, pardon me because I can't look at you. But if you're on YouTube, I'm looking right at you. Stop. Just stop it. Like, I get the bone comparison of, let's see, Trae Young is 6'2", 180. Steph Curry, I want to say, was about 6'2", 185, I believe, with his draft profile. Similar height, similar weight. They both have, when you look at the stats, they both averaged, and I'm looking at their last season. Of course, Steph Curry's last season was arguably his worst season statistically when it came to three-pointers and such, but they both have the same amount of points. The assists, he actually has three more assists per game than Steph Curry did. He rebounds around the same percentage, and their shooting percentages are similar. However, the three-pointer is the one that 41% from three was Steph Curry career-wise, because that 38% doesn't do Steph Curry justice, because that last year he wasn't as good behind the arc percentage-wise as he was the first two, whereas we have 37.7 for Trae Young. I get what you're trying to do. I get, and I'm not saying you, I get what they're trying to do, comparing him to Steph Curry. Could he be the next Steph Curry? Sure, why not? But I'm not saying that. The thing that I would say, and I would use for that, is people are going to say his wingspan isn't big enough. Oh, he's a shorter guy. How is he going to go against the athleticism of the NBA? What my argument would be, if I'm going to bring Steph Curry into it, is Steph Curry did it. Like, he can do it, but I'm not going to say that he's the next Steph Curry. You know what I mean?
Well, I think if anyone were to compare him to Steph Curry, it would have to be Steph Curry 3.0, because isn't Lonzo Ball already better than Steph Curry?
Yeah, but he's gonna
in LeVar Ball's mind, of course.
But he's got a wonky shot. Lonzo's got a wonky shot. He's got to go over to Lithuania with his brothers.
Yeah.
And he's got to train there for a little bit.
Yeah.
Because that's going to help. That's better than UCLA, apparently.
And hopefully keep their hands off of all the things in the stores that say "do not touch."
Yeah.
But no, I think that everyone always gets really excited. Every sport, but that's what they have to be able to try and compare him to. And then there's people who would say, well, don't compare them at all, because they're both completely different players. They may have similarities, but they're different players. They have different styles. One may like to drive more, the other one likes the outside shot, even if they're both outside shooters. You know what I'm saying? Like, there's something different in everybody. But what do we do? As American sports people, we love to compare. We compare everyone to the greatest. We compare everyone, any good quarterback that we see coming up, Tom Brady or Aaron Rodgers,
is
or
LeBron
something like that.
Is LeBron as good as Michael Jordan?
I mean, but it's what we do. It's what we do as sports people, sports fans. That's what we like to do. I don't know why we like to do it, but we all do. And my whole point with this is that obviously we can't, because then that just gets us to a point where then we start to see him do something wrong. It's like, no, he's bad. He's not gonna be like Steph Curry. He's not good. No, so he is his own player. Trae Young is going to be Trae Young when he gets to the NBA. He's not going to be the different version of Steph Curry. No. He's going to be the first version and only version of Trae Young. Unless, of course, there's another guy that comes along and his name's Trae Young. You know what I'm trying to get at here? It's just that we cannot do this continuous, well, he could be the next so-and-so, or he could be the next. No, just stop. Just stop, because that gives you expectations, and you create these lofty expectations for a player that maybe necessarily aren't there. And then when if they don't meet that in your mind, then they're not a good player. But I can tell you what is that going back to where his draft stock could be in the upcoming 2018 draft. So the fact that it's going to be a big, heavy draft. A lot of these small guys, these point guards, and stuff like that, they're going to be coming at a premium. And now, if that's the case, and that you're a team that's we could use a big, but we could find them because it's there's going to be plenty of them. We can get one later on if need be. You go with this guy. You go with Trae Young, and you take him a little earlier because. There's not a whole lot of his position in the draft. So that could be another thing that plays a part in it.
I'm going to say this. I think as of right now, and of course my opinion can change. Let's say he goes through the conference schedule and, to quote Jim Morris Sr. again, plays like diddly poo. Right now at this point, if you said, Ricky, where would Trae Young be? I would draft him in the top 5. And the reason why is I would actually take, you know what? I would actually put Collin Sexton as well into that, because I told you before we recorded, at some point this year, we are going to have, I can just smell it now, we're going to have a topic where it says Trae Young versus Collin Sexton, or Collin Sexton versus Trae Young, and we're going to talk about the two. The reason being, I'm looking at this mock draft on Tankathon. You've got Aton, who's a center. You've got Bagley, who's a power forward. You've got Bamba, who's a center. You have Bridges, who's a forward, 3-4, put him where you want. You've got Malik, well, you got 2 Bridges. You got Miles Bridges and Malik Bridges, where Malik Bridges is a 2 or a 3. You've got Robert Williams at Texas A&M, who's a 4. You've got Wendell Carter at Duke, who's a 4. There's a lot of bigs.
Yeah.
You know what I don't see in the top 11 players? Point guards.
Yeah.
I see 2.
Yeah.
I see Collin Sexton and I see Trae Young. And after watching some film and some games of Trae Young alone, what I can tell you about this kid is he going to be the next Steph Curry? Who the hell knows? But what I can tell you is I think this kid is going to be special because he's got a 3-point shot. Is he the best driver to the basket? No. Is he a little small and the guys in the NBA might be bigger? No. But I will take that. I will take a shooter over a pure driver any day of the week for the NBA, because what have we seen the NBA go to? If you have a guy who can shoot the ball well, your team means business. The Golden State Warriors have banked championships off of guys who can shoot. Klay Thompson, Steph Curry, these are guys who can shoot the basketball. You want to know what doesn't win you championships? When your best player is a 4 or a 5. That's what doesn't win you a championship. Plus, the one thing I didn't mention with Trae Young that I really like about his game, yeah, he can shoot the 3, he can shoot from deep. He can also pass the ball. There were times he'd drive in, throw the ball in there to a guy cutting on the baseline. I was like, holy shit, how did he fit that in there? How did he get that to that guy? This is a guy, to me, where I'm going to say it right now. We're going to talk about him when the draft comes the same way we talked about Lonzo Ball. You want to know the big 2 differences, though, that's going to be said about Trae Young that was not said about Lonzo? The first one is we're not going to talk about his shot at all because he doesn't have a weird shot mechanic. Number 2, we're not going to talk about his dad. We're not going to talk about any pressures. We're not going to have him overhyped because of his dad. Most of the stuff that's said about Lonzo with passing and finding guys and setting up the offense, people are going to start to notice that about Trae Young, except with Trae Young, they're going to go, wow, he's got a shot. We should draft him because he can do a lot more. I know defensively people are going to say, well, he doesn't play good defense. Guess what? How many times has Steph Curry been knocked for his defense and his team wins championships? And I know I said, oh, don't compare him to Steph Curry. That I'm going to use as a little comparison because just because you have a knock on defense doesn't mean you're up. I'm not going to draft you in the NBA because, I mean, the NBA, some people play defense, but it's more of an offensive league now, if anything.
So, oh my gosh, the NBA is so stupid. I can't even stand it. But I wanted to find a difference from Curry and Young so that we could just clear this all up. So I found it.
Okay.
Curry has a higher set point at the top of his forehead when he's shooting, whereas Young has his set point at chin level and shoots more out than up. Young's lower release, however, they're saying cause for concern shooting over contestants at his size, and likely one of the reasons why a lot of evaluators have not bought in fully to Trae Young. So I needed to just find something that people could go, well, he's totally like no. So there's your difference, and there's possibly something why people aren't having the discussions yet. Outside of us on the MVP podcast, and in the Primetime podcast, is the fact that they see something like this and they can say, well, that's enough to not make him a number one. You know what I'm saying?
And here's one.
That's the discussion that we're having.
Here's one of the last things that I'm going to say, and this is the last kind of topic, just to bring it all full circle now. The question at the beginning: could he be the number one pick? I'm going to say, if we're asking, could he? I'll say yes. But if the question is, will he? I'm going to say no. And the reason being is, fuck it, I'll even bring Steph Curry in again. He was drafted 7th overall in 2009, I believe it was. Did Steph Curry come into the league and boom, right away, he was Steph Curry? No. Took him a few years, took a coaching change, even though Mark Jackson was a good coach. Took a coaching change for Steve Kerr to take that team over the top, although people believe that Mark Jackson could have done the same. My point is, Trae Young to me, when we get to the draft, I'll probably have him still, unless, like I said, he completely craps the bed during conference and tournament time. I think he's going to be a top 5 talent. We're both going to have him and Sexton in the top 5 of players overall, especially on our big board that we will eventually do in January. And I feel like he won't go number 1. He might not go number 2. He may go 4, 5, or 6. However, the team that gets him, I think he will develop, and that set release, I think that's something he works on. I think that's one thing at the next level. They go, okay, we're going to help change your release point where you're doing it. And that's something that can change. I mean, look at an Oklahoma guy that you brought up to me before we hit the record button, and Buddy Hield. He was a guy who, of course, he was a senior, not a true freshman like Young is, but he was shooting with the wrong hand. And eventually changed. Like his sophomore year compared to his junior year, completely different because he was shooting with the wrong hand.
And then the angle where he was shooting was also different too. So a reason why he stayed longer
was to
go
that.
To his senior year and to change it, which is why we've been able to bring up a discussion of should you stay longer in school just because of the possibility of something like that to happen.
Which is interesting because one thing, there's pros and cons to each, I believe, but one thing that you could say for the NBA side is, let's say he goes to, I'm just going to throw out a crappy team like
the Bulls.
The Bulls. Fine. Yeah, I'll say it. What if he goes to the Bulls? Well, the good thing is Bulls probably aren't going to be competing for a championship anytime soon.
No.
So while the Bulls are a little bit stinky, you can change those things while earning an NBA contract compared to staying in school. However, you can do both. Buddy Hield stayed in school and changed it. Like, there are reasons why people are saying the same things now about Ben Simmons, that, hey, he should be shooting with the other hand. I mean, Buddy Hield changed, Wooden Award winner. So, I mean, things like that can change. What are your final thoughts? Could Trae Young be the number 1 pick? And right now, of course, this can change, but at right this point, do you envision that happening where it's first overall pick, Trae Young in June?
No, probably not. It's going to probably be Bagley. But I think that right now, if Trae Young, if he can continue this, again, just rabid pace, he's going to continue to make a name for himself. People are going to be looking at him. NFL, we're in football mode. But
we're going to that next.
And NBA scouts will be looking at him and really, really diving in deep on any weaknesses that he has, and then additional strengths. So I think that if he can keep this up, he's going to bring a lot of attention to himself, and he'll find himself, if not at number 1, rising up from number 11 where he is now.
I think right now, and our first big board for us will be the 30th of, no, wait, that's not right. Our first big board is going to be the 25th, the start of the official start for us here on the podcast of conference play. January 25th will be the day we record, so the 26th it'll come out. That will be our first big board for the NBA draft. And right now, if I had to do a big board tonight, Brandon, Trae Young would be top 5 on that big board. Collin Sexton would probably be there also, just because of what point guards mean when you get them into the NBA.
If you're going by, I mean, just with our college football big board, I mean, if you're going with your top 25 of the best players right now, I mean, I had Baker Mayfield plenty high, and a lot of people aren't saying that Baker Mayfield was going to be one of the top picks. the same can be said in this situation. You know, someone may be saying, and experts, which they're not, may be saying, you know, he's not a top 5, but could you definitely put him in your top 5 on your big board? Absolutely.
Here's a little bit of housekeeping at the end of this for our NBA draft aficionados out there. That's Ricky's big word of the week. Write that one down.
Of the week.
Number 1 is our first big board here on the Primetime Podcast will be January 25th will be the day Brandon and I record it. The 26th, 27th, 28th on YouTube. The 26th is when it'll come out on Blog Talk Radio, iTunes, Stitcher, and TuneIn Radio. The first mock draft for the Fast Break guys, I want to say is going to be January 3rd, I believe, is what they have down for their first one. I'll ask Sean to give you guys an update on the Fast Break this week. From the spreadsheet I'm looking at, though, January 1st, I believe, or January 3rd will be the first one that they do on their side. But I want you guys to chime in if you have not already. Let us know what you guys think about Trae Young. Let us know what you think about his play style, how it's going to translate over to the NBA, what you like, what you don't like, and also will he be or could he be the number 1 pick in the draft? And if not, how high do you think he can play himself in the NBA draft? Let us know what you guys think down below in the comments section.